Hey guys, I'm super excited to introduce you to Laurie Wagner. Cynthia Berg, who has been working with me at the Ripple Effect, sort of helping me get the website, refreshed and new content out there. Happen to mention that she is a big fan of Laurie's. Laurie puts on these workshops that really help stimulate the writer's brain, and I was super enamored with the story that Cynthia told me, and eventually ended up on Laurie's website, which is 27powers.org. And Laurie is just an unbelievable powerhouse. She and I have now had an opportunity to connect and have a conversation. I was super excited. Our schedules aligned for her to come onto the podcast, but she is really, really incredible in terms of what she's doing to support writers out there in the world. Laurie is a writer, teacher, and coach, and she's the author of 7 books. She's a mixed media artist, fervent collage maker, mother of 2, and a one-time amateur racquetball champion. I am super excited to have her be a part of the Ripple Effect podcast. So let's dive right in. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Ripple Effect podcast. I am so excited to have Laurie Wagner join me today. Laurie, thanks for being a part of the Ripple Effect podcast. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so thrilled. I know we were trying to do this a few weeks ago, and you were in Mexico at the time, conducting, workshops for folks that had traveled down with you. And so
Mhm.
I'm excited to learn about that work. But I appreciate you making the time because I know you're super busy and in demand, which is, a great place to be.
I think the times call for deep work. I think
Yes,
the times are asking us to get solid with ourselves so that we can meet ourselves in a solid and
absolutely.
authentic place, and meet each other in that place. And the work I do is a path toward that.
Well, I look forward to learning more about that work and sharing that with our audience. But I'm a big believer that we always start with the origin story. So I'm
Mhm.
curious, I read a little bit of your bio off your website in the introduction, but let me just get a sense of kind of how you became who you are today. I mean, what motivated and inspired you to go down this path? How did you get there? Was there, something significant in your past that sort of kind of guided you down to do the work that you're doing? You're clearly doing the work that you were intended to do. So,
Mhm.
what's that origin a little bit story about?
Yeah, and I'll try to sort of cut and paste it so that it doesn't take
Well, I saw you
because
like collages, so that's a perfect way to start, right?
I do. I do, and I like bits and pieces too,
Yeah.
But I will say that, when I was a child growing up in Los Angeles, I was always the one who was making music, drawing on my walls, making cartoons, playing all sorts of things, writing. So that
Yeah.
was always who I was. And I was talking to a friend the other night, and I was saying that the way that I've always done things was to learn enough about something to then go take off and do my own thing.
Yeah.
So I never learned how to read music, and I'm not the kind of writer who is really paying attention to grammar and to all the bits and pieces that an editor, but I'm very instinctual, and
Yep.
my all my work is kind of, I hope, beautiful, and it's messy.
Yeah.
So it's very instinctual and intuitive, but that's just the path I've always taken. But so I was always that kid who was doing that kind of work. I was always into the arts. To this day, music is still my number one sort of, that's the gateway, the pathway toward
Really?
like deep happiness. And I mean, all of it is beautiful, but music is amazing because it just touches you so deeply. It gets your emotions activated. But I did go to journalism school at University of Colorado in Boulder. I did I did have bands. I was always doing things. I remember an art project in college where I filled these squirt guns with colored paint, watery paint, and just
Uh-huh.
squirted. Like, I was always sort of doing something like that. That's the kind of thing that made me happy. I was a good enough student. Um, but again, even with journalism, I didn't follow the path of journalism.
Yep.
I did my own thing. I always worked in bookstores, so I was around books. I started working. I've been in Berkeley 40 years, and I started working as a journalist for the local paper, writing stories about music and artists. I mean, I was
Yeah.
always stayed in my field. I
Yeah.
was staying. I was paying attention always to What do I care about? What's interesting to me? I've never been a good faker. So I can't fake it on the page. I can't fake it in my relationships. I can't fake it with the work I do. I always have to be sort of in tune with what matters to me. So that's a theme,
Sure.
that's it feels like an important theme. And like every journey, it's funny. I remember someone telling me something 100 years ago that, when you're looking ahead in your life, it feels like there are all these different paths. But when you're looking behind, it's one path.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's all these things that might not have seemed like they fit or may have seemed like, oh, that didn't work out at the time, but everything takes you to the next place.
Yeah.
So even if, for instance, I trained as a coach for a whole year, great training, didn't use it.
Yeah.
Didn't really find that I wanted to be a coach, didn't have the patience for coaching.
Yeah.
But that whole year was really important. And I'm sure I take some of that work into the work I do today, though I don't call myself a coach
Right.
so I wouldn't have. But anyway, just kind of fast tracking it, working, as a freelance writer for local papers and writing about the arts. I think at one point, and this is a really important part too, is that I was 31 and I thought I need to get myself on the track. I wanted to have a career. I wanted to have a family. I wanted the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I got a job with Simon and Schuster. I was a publishing sales rep and I traveled for 3.5 years. It was really, really wonderful. Learned a lot about books, got married, the whole thing. But one of the things I learned about Simon, and I'm sure it's a great company, but it's a corporation
Yeah. It's a
and
business, right? Yeah.
it's a business. And
Yeah.
I loved it. But what I learned, I want to say something, I'm backtracking a second, but when I was 31 and I went for that job at Simon, it was because I looked at all the things I loved in my life, my art, my writing, my music,
Yeah.
and I decided that I wasn't good enough to compete in the marketplace. I decided I wasn't a good enough writer, wasn't a good enough musician, the whole bit. And then I needed to just chuck it and go work for the man
Yeah.
and go do something and make something. And
Sure.
what I learned in that work, and I made a lot of friends and I loved being around books, but what I learned was that there was a lot of books coming out that were really bad, that were really just not necessary,
Yeah.
not helpful. And I realized that I had sold myself out, that I had all this love in me, all this passion, all this joy. And I had decided that the market, I wasn't up to snuff. And so I chucked it. And when I realized that, it pained me. It made me
Yeah.
so sad inside that I had I had kind of used the market as the standard and I had ignored what was inside me. And I felt like at the time, and I was 34 by then, and I realized I'm going to get sick. If I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
doing the work that's really inside of me, I'm going to get sick. Like, what do I need to do to learn this lesson? So I left Simon, and I tell you what, a month later, I got my first book deal with Chronicle Books,
Wow.
and that was like, sometimes the universe just sort of goes, good move,
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I have to remember that still in my life because I tend to be a heavy lifter and
Yep.
tend to put a lot on my own shoulders, and I forget to ask for help.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad I'm saying that to you because I could still ask for help
Sure.
in all sorts of ways. I don't, but anyway, left Simon and started writing books for Chronicle Books. That was really interesting. Again, I focused on the things that were interesting to me, which was a book on long-term marriage, a book on raising children,
Yeah.
but from a very personal place. I interviewed lots of people. These are photography essay books because I was continuing to use my own experience and ask myself, what matters to me? What matters to me? Marriage was challenging. I wanted to find
Yeah.
out how people survived marriages, how they made. The question I had at the time was, could a hard marriage be a good marriage? Just because it was hard, did that mean that
Yeah.
was evidence that? And same with motherhood. It was like, wow, this is hard. I want to hear from other mothers. So I've
Yeah.
always continued to move in the direction of what interested me. Okay, again, and I wrote a bunch of other books, but that was a hard way to make a living, especially with little kids, because
Sure.
when you're coming up with ideas like um, things you want to make, but then you need to get permission from publishers or
Yeah.
you need to sell your ideas in order to make these projects happen. It's a hard way to make a living when you need to have an income. So,
Yeah,
and my kids
and
are,
that they're tough, right? Because pitching it back to the publisher, they're looking at it from a business perspective, kind of back to your Simon Schuster days, right? At the end of the day, they're like, well, even though you have interest in it, doesn't mean that there's an audience for it. And what I found in the publishing space, there's a lot of jaded, frustrated writers in there. So there's a lot of
mhm,
negativity. So
mhm,
you're often led down the path that, well, that's not going to sell, that's not going to work. Move on, pick
yeah.
something else.
And it's gotten harder, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's gotten much harder. That's why the self-publishing has really sort of blossomed for a lot of
sure,
people, and I think that's a wonderful thing. The old model isn't the only way to go,
that's
and I
right.
love that, you know. So anyway, wrote books and found out that a friend who had an online teaching school or a writing school called writers.com, Mark Dalby at the time, he just sort of engaged me in wanting to teach for him, even though I didn't have a master's or anything like that. And so I just started because I needed a consistent income. My husband was an artist
Yeah,
and I wasn't comfortable with our up and down, not knowing how to pay a bill.
yeah,
And so I needed something consistent. And it turned out that I was a good teacher. It turned out that Mark said to me, he goes, Laurie, he said, you just need to love people. Like good teachers just love people.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I loved people and I cared about people and I was really moved by their stories. And so that began like a lot of many, many years. I think I worked for them for 9 or 11 years, like a
Wow.
long time. And I kept my jobs, I was always working different things. So I'm very practical. So I wasn't just hoping that, when you create something new, there's always the hope like it'll take care of everything. It doesn't, you
No,
have
no,
to
gotta work at it.
you
Yep.
got to work a lot of things. Anyway, years and years and years. I'll tell you something, Steve, which is that I've always taught from the street. Again, I
I
am
like
not
that.
an academic.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
always sort of brainstormed what mattered to me, and the next thing comes, and the next thing comes. And so the wild writing, which is the cornerstone of the work that I do today, I don't work for writers.com anymore. I've been doing my own thing for, I don't know. I know I've been teaching for 20 years and
yeah,
I've been doing this particular piece of work, this wild writing for about 30. And the wild writing is something I didn't make up. Natalie Goldberg, who did Writing Down the Bones. And even earlier than that, I think even like there's some Jungian body of therapy that has this automatic writing where you're just sort of intuiting and writing from the heart,
yeah,
writing as fast as you can. And that's what wild writing is. In wild writing, we write as fast as we can for 15 minutes, pen never leaving the page. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop our critical mind, the one
yes,
that wants to do it right, the one that wants to present, the one that wants to stay in the tribe and do things well. And
yeah.
that is exhausting. Just for me to have to repeat that is exhausting. And so what we're practicing with the wild writing is we're writing as fast as we can so we don't have time to curate it and say, what is the right word? Or I can't say that. Like we're writing too fast for the critical mind to engage. And instead we're we're strengthening the muscle to the intuition and the instinct
Oh,
and trying to tell the truth. And that is the power of wild writing. It's super healing because isn't that what we're trying to do in our lives? We're trying to
yeah,
sort of unzip from the presentation so that we can step out and feel like we're our authentic selves. And
yeah.
then I can meet you in that place and you can meet me in that place. And then something is really happening. So
That's where the
that's the
magic
work.
happens, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when we get out of these preconceived notions and we color outside the lines, that's where the magic really, really happens. So that's fascinating to
Yeah.
me.
And it's also the place where we can find intimacy
Sure.
with ourselves and with other people. And especially in the last couple of years, it feels like it's more and more important to me that we're not wasting our time
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
that we're not just doing the right thing or living appropriately or doing what people expect. Like when I read a piece of writing, I want someone to show me who they are and to
yeah.
really show me the human stuff because that helps me feel less alone, you know?
I
So
love
that's
that.
what I do. And now my world is all wild writing and I've built a really big community of people around. The pandemic really kicked that up
Yeah.
because there's so many people who want to connect.
So,
So
so let
that's
me ask
the
you a
cornerstone.
couple of questions there that kind of just like, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but it sounds like, well, first and foremost, being a child that was into so many different creative elements, right? It sounds like you kind of buck the system that we educate and teach our kids, especially, I think we're, pretty close in age, right? So at the end of the day, it was like you always were supposed to be quiet, sit down, follow the rules, do things the
Mhm.
way that you were told to do them, don't deviate. And for a creative person, that's just like kryptonite, right? It's really
Yeah.
frustrating. So did you have that challenge as a child?
I did, I'm sure I scared my parents a lot because, but I also probably interested them in a way.
Yeah.
But I went to some crazy schools in Los Angeles growing up. I went to the alternative schools. I remember this one alternative school that I wanted to go to, and my mom said, "Over my dead body, you'll go there." And I did go there. And she's still alive.
And she's still alive. All right, good. I was just making sure.
you know, but I remember, I remember that. I remember that probably no one had a lot of hope for me in the sense that I was also wild. I
Yeah.
also made a lot of wild choices, and I was born in Los Angeles in the 60s.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't the Midwest. It
No,
was
no, a
very
little different culture
sophisticated.
there, just a bit.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah,
So no, it was hard, but I tell you, I think the thing is, it's like that day when I realized that I'd sold myself out. Like I feel it in my body.
yeah,
I feel like I could get sick.
yep,
And so it takes a kind of courage that I'm still learning how
yeah,
to continue to put myself out there in an honest way. And that means that if I'm talking about or writing about stuff that's possibly triggering or troubling, or people might misunderstand me or judge
yep,
me, like I have to kind of get right with myself
yeah.
so that you know, I can tolerate looking different or being different. You
You
know
know,
what I mean?
yeah, I do know. The thing that really struck me when we had our conversation, we first got acquainted, and Cynthia Berg had introduced us, and you were so delightful to get on a call and just, let us riff a little bit about, what I'm doing and what you're doing. The thing that I was most impressed with was that you were super you were hyper focused about what you're trying to deliver, right? And how you're trying to deliver it, and the experience that I think, trying to overcome what we all go through, even in life, right? Even as, I was talking about being a child and sort of told to follow the
Mhm.
set of rules, but as adults, we all fall into that too, where we just
Mhm.
surrender, right? A lot of times, we're living lives where we just like say, uncle, whatever, I'm just going to do what society and the norms suggest I should do.
Mhm.
And how many people out there are living a life right now that is just so unfulfilling? And
Mhm.
and to your point, potentially making you ill,
Mhm.
ending your life a lot earlier than you should because there's no
Mhm.
passion or enthusiasm. And what I
Yeah.
really admired about you in that first conversation was how you could dive in with both, feet and be like, this is it. It may not be for everybody, but this is what I'm doing. And I'm
Mhm.
super passionate about it because it's an outlet for me. And I know it would be an outlet for those that are
Mhm.
coming to, whether it be the workshops or the trainings or even the
Mhm.
online courses that you offer,
Mhm.
they're coming to the table with a desire to find something different.
Mhm. That's right. I think they're coming to the table like they don't even need to be writers to appreciate the medicine of the work. That's
Yes.
the thing that we have these ideas like, but I'm not, or I should, not like that. It's more
Yeah.
like we're just human beings. And so I think that I can't speak for everyone, but we want to come alive.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
want to feel a kind of aliveness and 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 a joy. And I think that in the beginning, when I was starting a couple of years ago, with the pandemic started, I was teaching to very large groups of people. And I asked a friend of mine, why do you think these people are coming to work with me? And he said, you appear to be somebody who is connected to themselves and
Yep.
connected to your family and connected to your work and your community. And that's what they want. They want to feel connected to themselves, which is a kind of aliveness, which is a kind of,
Yes. Absolutely.
I got you, which is like,
Yeah.
I am here. And I think that was really powerful for me because he said to me, you don't have to do anything different, Laurie. All you have to do is stay connected to yourself
Yeah.
and teach
Yeah.
from a connected place. And then you'll welcome connection for them. And I think, what I'm hearing you say too, and what it makes me think about, and I was thinking about our talk, is that I think one of the misconceptions about a lot of things, about like moving into anything creative or anything new, or maybe it's a sport, I don't know, but we think we have to be a certain way or
Yeah.
have a certain something. But I think more and more what I'm interested in is like having the tiniest little light. Like if you have the tiniest little light for something, like I really want to cook, or
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love music, or whatever it is, like I say, like we we have to like lower the bar so
Yeah.
we can pay attention to the tiniest little not the big stuff, not go too far into the future, but just like I love this. Like, let's say you want to cook, for instance, it's like, I just want to cook. Like, okay, let's start with something really simple, a smart, very small, or,
Yeah.
like take a cooking class, like whatever to do to follow it. I think of it as like, imagine like, I always say this, like we're making a path to grandma's house. And the grandma's house, you have to go through the woods of all the stuff you encounter on the way to
Yeah.
grandma's house. But it starts with like seeing something super tiny in the leaves and following it and finding it.
Yep.
And then another tiny thing and following it. And just like humbling ourselves to just follow the tiniest thing and just say yes, move
Yeah,
forward.
I love that. Well, and I think you're sort of headed down the Little Red Riding Hood kind of mindset, right? But the big bad wolf is the one that's always trying to tell you you can't, or you're not good enough, or you shouldn't, or that's a distraction that you don't need, or the world doesn't want. And I
And it's
find
not
that
true.
yeah, yeah, it's totally not true. And what I
Yeah.
find, what I love about that sort of that story that you share is the tiny little light, right? Is how many of those tiny lights when you're a kid, right? And you have the wide-eyed enthusiasm. It's like anything is possible. And
Yeah.
then somewhere along the lines, whether it be our parental, guides, or our siblings or our teachers or society in general, try to get you down the only path, right, to grandma's
Mhm.
house. And
Mhm.
oftentimes that leads us a lot astray. But when we're those kids and we look at everything, there's all these little points of light, like you were saying, in all the world of possibility is, and somehow, some way, as adults, we lose that. And
Mhm.
I know one of my passions is trying to figure out how to regain that. And what I
Mhm.
love about your approach and just your enthusiasm for what you do, and to your friend's point, people are showing up because you're authentic. They're
Mhm.
showing up because you have found something that everybody really at their heart of hearts really desires and needs. And you
Mhm.
sort of kind of like found that fountain of youth to figure out, okay, my gosh, whatever you're
Mhm.
drinking,
Mhm.
I'm in, right? And I think that's what's amazing about what the work is
Mhm.
that you do, because I think you're giving people not only permission, but you're also showing them the possibilities. And like
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
said, finding those little points of light, whatever their interests might be, whether it be writing, whether it be, the creative thinking, or putting that into music or their art, or whatever the case
Mhm.
might be, it doesn't have to follow a prescriptive method. It can be wild and it can be messy. And
Mhm.
that can
Mhm.
lead to some of the most enjoyable experiences ever.
Yeah, I'm with you completely. And I was thinking something too. I see your guitar back there
Uh-huh.
behind you. And it was is that a guitar? It
It
looks like
is.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There it is. Okay. I was thinking, many years ago, I was like I said, I had bands, I was super into music. And I remember having a conversation with myself years and years ago, like, what if I don't make it in the music business?
Mhm.
What if I don't actually become? And then it was like I realized, well, as long as I'm near music, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
long as I'm listening to music, I'm gonna be okay. And I think that's part of it. I think the culture we see, especially on social media, we see like the bodies, the incredible bodies,
mhm,
we
yeah,
see the wealth, we see the sort of pinnacle of things or something, some
yeah,
some version of that. And I think it really chokes us
yes,
because then we're measuring like that. And I think that we have to find again, I want to use that word humility. Like, can we tolerate our own experience of something? And part of what we do in wild writing is part of the medicine of it is learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
yes,
And that means learning to not love every moment of what you're writing, but to keep writing because, we have those big judgments. And if I don't like this, this is terrible. And we walk away, nothing happens. So we have
that's
to
right.
be willing to be in the process. It's like a relationship. If every
Yeah,
time, your partner, like, oh, yeah, yay, and you don't walk away every time there you are again. The idea is to stay alert and awake,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
but that is a big part of it too. So I think there's just a lot of humility in saying yes to the passionate things that you're interested in, and allowing yourself to start where you are and to
I
have
love
that
that.
be enough,
Yep. Yeah,
you
I
know?
love that. So I got to ask you, because you've mentioned it a few times, the music. What did you play? What was your thing in the band? What did you do?
I wrote music,
Okay.
and I played guitar, and sometimes I played piano, and I wasn't a great musician. I was probably a better singer.
Yeah.
Um, Someone asked me this question years and years ago when I had sort of left the stage, for instance, and she goes, and I was doing something else. She goes, "How does it feel to not be doing the thing you're really best at?" I never
Oh,
forgot
wow.
she said that to me, and it
Wow.
was like, wow. So, I've really made peace with that. I mean, I listen to so much music, and
Yeah.
I listen to so much music, so it doesn't feel like I never have a conversation with myself that goes, "You could have been a contender."
Yeah.
I don't do that. I have my own new goals for myself
Yeah.
where my challenges are, the things I'm afraid of. Like, I'm continuing to grow. I'm
Love that.
continuing to look at the places in my life where I have dead weight,
Yep.
where I could drop some things in order to lift myself and
Yep.
and have more of a enjoyable, relaxed path.
Yep.
I'm always doing the work.
I love that. I mean, when we were first going to do this interview, you were down in Mexico with your group, and you were just so great. You reached out and you're like, energetically, I'm just not where I need to be, and I want to be fully present here. And I was
Yeah.
totally fine with that, right? I love that. In fact, it further maybe just love you and what you're doing, because you are like, hey, look, if it just doesn't feel right, I don't want to do it, right? And that's given you a lot of freedom, not only personally, but also from a professional perspective, to sort of be able to, you're not just telling people how to do it and what to do, but you're actually showing them, and you're living through that authenticity that really sets the example for them, that this is what's possible if you open this up. It's an unbelievably amazing Pandora's box if you're willing to allow yourself to try it.
Yeah, and I get help with that too. There are
Yeah.
some things that I have a blind spot to. And I've been working with a coach, and she has really helped me see, like, why are you doing that? You don't
Yeah.
have to do that. Like, I
Yeah.
still have like a real work dog in me. I'm a workhorse. And she's like, "Do you have to do that?" Like, so I'm still learning all that. But I think one of the things you're saying that was interesting to me was during the pandemic, the first 2 years of the pandemic, I was sad. Like,
Yeah.
I was really knocked off my course, not professionally, but just as a human being. I felt
Yeah.
felt a lot of deep feelings, and I was leading a community, and I had to show up with those deep feelings. I didn't show up like, "Hey, everyone,
Everything's
take
great. Yeah.
everything's
Yeah.
great," or "You can do it." Like,
Yeah.
I didn't show up like that. And I remember one person who was working with me at the time, not she didn't know me well, but she's like, "You have to lead us out of this. You have to inspire us to move forward." And I wrote back and I said, "I can only lead from where I am.
Yeah.
And I need to move through the passage of this inside myself." And it was vulnerable for me to
Yeah.
show up sad. It's vulnerable for me to show up tired. But I try to name those things when I show up in those large communities. And what I find is people are like, "Oh, thank you. I
Yeah. Me
was
too.
feeling,
Yeah,
yeah, me
yeah,
too."
or they make
And
you're more relatable at that point, you're
you're
not
more
putting on an act
relatable.
or a share or a show, right?
Yeah. And then you make a real connection. And I
Yes.
hope that that's has people feel less alone. And that even naming it, like, I feel flat, I feel tired, I feel scared, or whatever. Like, when you start from where you are, it's super grounding. And then from there we move.
Yeah.
And from there we move because we've actually named, versus starting from a place that's super outside of ourselves. Like, I'm not happy, but I'm going to pretend. And then you don't start from there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't you don't make anything. You have to start from, like, your native soil of where you are. And then you have to, and it's vulnerable, but it's less work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well,
you
I
know?
have a ripple question I want to ask you. I mean, what lessons did your childhood teach you that sort of guide and direct you to, how you do your life today?
Hmm. Hmm. That's an interesting question. Um, I mean, I I had a few thoughts. I think there were some cautionary tales
Yeah.
too. Like, I think when my dad died 13 years ago, there were ways in which he hadn't allowed himself to really come alive
Oh, wow.
in certain parts of his life. I think he was also afraid and insecure, and he kept himself back. And so, you watch that, and that's a real cautionary tale. I
Yeah.
remember when he died, the words that came to me were just like, live,
Yeah.
live, like, don't hold yourself back, Um, and I, I didn't, I mean, I probably got some a- attention for being a creative kid. But I wasn't super duper talented, but I had a lot of passion,
Yeah.
and I wasn't going to do anything else very well, you know? Um, so
But you do
I don't
what you
know,
what you're good at, right? And what you enjoyed. The thing I loved about that is, you said it earlier, which is what you were interested in, not what society or the world was
yeah,
telling you should be interested in, but what really intrigued you, whether it be in the type of work that you were, focused on, or the type of writing, or how to go out and learn, new skills or abilities, right? It was something that had to spark that interest with you.
yeah, I think you just answered my question for me much better than I did.
I know.
You did.
I didn't mean to, I promise. I'm
No,
sorry.
you did it. I heard myself back. You reflected back for me
Yeah.
what was true. And I also and there were many years where I felt lost about that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always, as I said, been super practical. So when I was writing for the newspapers or making music or whatever I was doing, I always had a stable job to not put too much pressure
Sure.
on the beautiful little thing that I was trying to craft. And it's just been many years, right? Like I've been working for 30, no, 50 years. No, not in 50, 40 years,
Yeah,
and that's a whole path,
that is.
So I have a 27-year-old and a 24-year-old, two daughters, and I just kind of look at them and I just watch. I don't feel that their lives need to be strategic. I
I
don't feel
love it.
like choose this because then it'll give you that,
Yeah,
or this is the path people take to get that. Like I just try to sit back and just trust their choices and trust that things unfold. And that analogy again of like it's one path and everything we do shows you something else.
yep,
So even if that thing doesn't turn out or there's a funny, it even feels bad, like you can learn from that.
sure.
Trust that,
I love that. Oh, that's
as long
excellent.
as you're saying yes to what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so what led you down the path to start 27powers.org? I mean, I love your website. So I encourage everybody that sees this video or hears this on the podcast platforms, go check out 27powers.org. It's one of the most beautifully laid out websites. And it just, when Cynthia sent it to me, I was like, I'm in. I have got to meet you because I'm
Mhm.
just totally enamored with the work that you're doing and the approach that you're taking. But you have just such a very artistic approach to the work that you're offering. And so, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. And I just want to say about that website, like the first major photo on the website is my yard,
Yeah,
where on a day when we took all the furniture inside the house and moved it out to the yard. And we used to have these big music shows here,
yeah,
and we'd bring all the couches out to the yard. So that just kind of already sets this
I
tone
love
for
it. I love it.
you
Yeah,
know, but and all the artwork in the yard, like it's all artwork that came from the house that I made or, someone I love made. So it's all very homespun.
yeah,
Um, I, I had been teaching wild writing for a long time here at the house, and I also been teaching online for a long time. And we used to do in the classes that we used to run here, we used to make a little zine and a little
yeah.
magazine based on the season of work that the writers at this table created. And we made this magazine, and the husband of one of our friends, we were trying to come up with the name for the zine, and he called it 27 Powers. That's my street address. My street address is 27 Powers.
Oh,
And he
wow.
said, call it the 27 Powers. And I love that because it sort of opens up this,
Yeah.
what are the 27 powers? And that'll just take me my whole life to
Yeah.
figure out.
Yeah.
We're living into that answer here. What are the
Love that.
27 powers? But that is my street address. And so it just starts naturally. It started with many, many years of teaching at this table to women. It started many years of teaching online to women, mostly, some men. And then it just continued to unpack itself. My friend Andrea Shear and I wanted to start teaching. We teach creativity through writing and photography and wonder. And we wanted to start teaching in Mexico. So we figured out how to start teaching, bringing people to Mexico. And there's even a trip that my friend Jeff Greenwald and I are doing to Nepal, to Kathmandu in the
Wow.
spring. Same thing, writing, adventuring, watching, taking notes, really interesting culture, and bringing ourselves as creative people into these really creative environments. And now,
Yeah. Well, the question I was going to ask you is, so is the intent in taking these people to Mexico or Nepal to get them out of their element and to experience new things that they may not have otherwise done on their own, but now they have the support of the group and they experience this together? Or walk us through what you do in these events.
yeah, the idea is to wake yourself up with the
Love
new
it.
smells, the new
Yeah.
sounds, the new cobblestones under your feet, the beggars, the spiritual spots, the color, the smell, the food, the whole thing is to trigger, like wake ourselves up so we become more alert. So we start feeling new things. So we feel a little, how it is in our lives. We kind of do the same thing. We're just like bum, and it kind of deadens us in a way.
Yeah.
Seen that already. We think we head to the market. We know the path. So we stop looking. But when you're in a new place, you start everything, you're seeing everything. And so as a creative person, for writers or anyone who just wants to wake up, to put themselves in places where they don't know how to get to this, or they don't know what they smell, or what is this,
Yeah.
is really, really enlivening. And I think even just leaving the United States is really important, because the way we live here, and the stress that's in
Yeah.
the air, that's in the water. It's not everywhere. The United
Yeah.
States is its own special place. It's
Yeah.
not everywhere. And you see how people live, like in Kathmandu. Those people are some of the poorest people in the entire world. And they are also some of the most peaceful. How is that?
Yeah.
How is that they are the most spiritual and most reverent and most kind? And also, if you just look at their living conditions, it's like, how's that? And that's really helpful, because
Yeah.
in our culture, we look at things like, if only I can have enough, or get to that, or get to these. People have nothing. And
Yeah.
look how peaceful they are. So
Yep.
those kind of things are really important. Once there, we do the writing practice, because we're taking in all this information, and now we're going to start to lay it down, so we can write everything down that we're experiencing. This encounter, that moment, always starting with the little moments, not trying to write the big stories, and taking pictures and collecting color and meeting people. And it's just, those kinds of things are just beautiful.
Oh, it sounds fascinating, and I'm definitely intrigued enough. I want to try it sometime, because I mean, well, I think for a lot of us, we get caught up in like you said, especially for those of us here in the States. I mean, we have this challenge because we all have a status that we sort of either aspire to live towards, or we feel
Mhm.
like we're more empowered than someone else, and we tend to look down and we never consider the things that you just mentioned, and how big a miss is that, right? And I can
Mhm.
imagine people that go to these events with you that come back never can look at what they do and where they are in their lives and the communities that they live in the same,
Mhm.
because how could you? Because you're forever changing that record, so to speak.
Mhm.
You're scratching it, so it's
Mhm.
it's altered, and that perspective is way different. And
Mhm.
that to me sounds just absolutely fascinating and ultimately empowering.
Yeah, I mean, right? The idea is to wake up, and to bring that woken up place back to your own life.
Yeah.
so that you just don't fall into the pattern. And I think we all fall into the pattern. Like, that's why it's good to get outside. That's why I like the work that I do with the wild writing, because I'm asking us to actually stumble, to actually, the first piece of business with the wild writing is please write as poorly as possible. So we're
I
not
love that.
striving. We're not striving. We're not reaching for the stars. We're actually just trying to be a human being and just trying to, like, I say to people when we start writing, like, let your bellies hang over your
Yeah.
jeans.
Yeah.
Please just let's relax and meet each other and meet ourselves in a relaxed place. And from there, let's start to wake up to what's here.
Yeah.
Wake up to what's here. And I think, waking up your imagination is, is great. And whether you're waking it up with cooking or just listening to music or going
Yeah.
outside or risking something, doing something different. I mean, again, this is has to be my practice all the time, because I'm just a human being. I can fall into flatness
Yeah.
anytime.
Yeah.
And maybe there's wisdom in flatness too, but
Yep.
I, I don't, at the end of the day, I guess what's really important to me at the end of the day, when this is all over for me and I'm laying there, is, I mean, I want something we haven't even talked about, which is I want to feel that I have loved and that I
Mhm.
have allowed love in. And we're talking about creativity and we're talking about writing, but those are all part of the mix
Sure.
of helping me to be a more um, alive human being. And through aliveness comes love,
Yeah.
and through
Yeah.
aliveness comes peace and joy and all those things. It's not going to come from, that new car.
No.
It's not going to come that way. But I think in this culture, and I'm guilty of it myself, there's that everything is so shiny.
Yeah.
There's all this shiny stuff.
Yeah.
And it's tempting, but it's, what has legs, what has longevity, deep connection,
Yep. Yeah.
connecting with yourself, making some peace, connecting with others. Doing this work we do in community is very powerful, because when you have a community of people who are writing authentic stories and reading them aloud to other people, and people are listening to the vulnerability and the authenticity, it changes the waters of your community.
It does. Absolutely.
And we don't relate the way we used to, or we get down to it,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, one of the things that I do through the Ripple is try and get people to go completely opposite of what we've been trained to do, which is, those questions of, so what do you do, Laurie? And, we put on these airs and we feel like we're on stage, so we have to perform. And the reality is I do these events called 8-minute ripples where we say no networking, that you're accustomed to of any kind. Right. So at the end of the day, we created ripple questions to allow two complete strangers to connect at a heart level. Right.
I love
Belly to
that.
belly, heart to heart conversation about, what exactly, like where kind of I started with one of those things. What's a lesson you learned from your childhood that you still learn today, or that you still use today, or the
Mhm.
little things that allow you to see beyond that person, their title or their station in life or whatever, and realize that's just another human being that you want to connect with. And when you do it, oh my God, when you see people like, holy crap, I get why we're doing this, and now I'm
Mhm.
experiencing it, I'm learning just as much about myself as I am about the other people I'm connecting
Mhm.
with. And it's an
Mhm.
amazing experience.
And I have to think that the people who have that experience, then when they go back into the regular life with their people, that there's this need, like we
Yeah.
could actually connect like that. And then if they're brave enough, they're the ones who start the conversations and ask the questions no one's asking. And that's how they change the waters of their own life.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they stop they start noticing the relationships that aren't connected, that
Yep.
aren't where that's not happening. And they have a choice. Am I going to, try to bring that person into, because I know that person really wants to get down to it, or maybe
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
but it really hasn't. I mean, I love that you're doing that, because that's the kind of waking up I'm talking about. It sounds like what you're doing in the Ripple is what we're doing on the page.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's why, I resonated so much with the work that you're doing. And the one thing I think that it really made an impression on me just about what you just said about, in those those last moments, are you feeling loved? And, were you worthy of the love that you received? The thing that I think that is so important in the work that we both do is that we actually give people permission to be themselves and actually connect with that. Because if you can't love yourself, how can you love other people, or be a fully engaged participant in this world, if you can't learn to have that relationship with yourself, which I think is key. And so I know, just, having written a book and being a consummate journaler, one of the key things that, that writing has allowed me to do, and I don't do it nearly as I do have, the problem of doing things perfect sometimes. And I have to get
Me
over
too.
that, because
Me
you just don't get the magic. But at the end of the day, some of those words that you put on paper that nobody will see,
too.
the most important person is seeing it, because you'll reread it and you'll go back to it and you'll find, the power in that, maybe a week from now or 10 years from now. But you're coming back to those thoughts of the moment for you can be so incredibly powerful, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think you can't continue to tell yourself the truth on the page and then live a different life. Like that won't go on forever.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're gonna, your psyche's saying like, over here, where
Yeah.
we've been telling you, And sometimes we say like, who you are on the page is who you are in your life, and the idea is to, get that so it matches.
Yeah.
Um, and what I love about like the workshops we do with women in Mexico is we create from day one this really authentic experience through the raw writing, through the
Yeah.
writing. We don't just say, okay, come and be your authentic self. We all need a guidance for that. And the
Sure.
writing is a really fast way to just sort of take what's inside and bring it out.
Go right to the
And
core. I mean,
go
at the
right
end of
to
the
the
day.
core.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it turns out to be this really cherished tribe of people for 5 days who feel that they can breathe and they can be themselves and they're seen, and we're not judging it, and we're not,
Yeah.
making it better. We're just welcoming everyone as they are. And I think that's so super healing. And I think that's so much of the work that we're doing, as I'm thinking about it in the last couple of years with the wild writing, is we're gathering what we already have in our lives that is beautiful, as opposed to trying to, what's that phrase? It's like, want what you have, not what you don't have.
Yeah.
And so there's a way in this culture we're constantly like, I'll be happy or when I get
Yeah.
that, or,
If
all of
only
it.
this. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
only this,
Yeah.
we all have it. We all have it.
Yeah.
But to actually start to collect and to see what is already here and in front of us, inside of us, where all those little pieces of light I was talking about, like right here, it's a kind of a calming and beautiful feeling of like, okay,
Yeah.
it's here. I'm okay. It's all right. There's a lot of beauty here, but we've been looking outside ourselves. We all do it, but so I think there's something very healing about that, because we already have
Yeah.
a lot, a lot.
That's so incredible. I love that. What would you say, another ripple question for you would be, what would you say the best piece of advice that you were given that you still use today, maybe apply to your daughters? I mean, something that, that you may have got it from a first teacher or a parent, and you're like, I'm never
Mhm.
going to use that. But then you end up using it, and it really applies to your life or your work today. And maybe, you carried it forward for your own kids or your own students.
Mm. So funny. I have a couple of answers for you. Um, I'll tell you that I had a couple of mentors in my life when I was younger who told me I couldn't do what I'm doing. I had two mentors who told me I wasn't good enough to do
Oh,
what I'm doing, and that I didn't have the drive and the ability. And that had an opposite effect on me,
yeah.
because I took it and I was like,
Oh,
watch
yeah?
me.
I'll show you. Yeah.
I'll show
I
you.
love it.
So that's just how I'm made. So
Yeah.
those were interesting. Those were interesting people. And that's an interesting lesson, but it really motivated me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like, and back to the sort of rebellious kid who was drawing on the walls and wanted to do her own thing. So that might motivate you.
Yep.
I'm thinking also about one of my daughters. She was really, really interested in two things: fashion and makeup. And those things seemed like, they weren't very important or valuable,
Hmm.
but that's what she really, really loved. Like, she was super interested in skincare and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And we just kept saying, sweetie, just follow it. Just follow it. She goes, great. You want me to be something like a makeup artist or something, or do people's makeup? Like, she was already sort of making it small. We're like, who knows what is
Yeah.
down that path? Someone said to me once, okay, I'll give you one. Someone said, cream rises to the top. And it was actually 20 years ago when I went to my sister and brother-in-law. My brother and sister-in-law had given me a gift for my 40th birthday to go to this palm reader. And he said, you're a really good coach, and you're a really wonderful actress. Like, you can do these things. And I said, but I'm 40. Like, it's too late, And he goes, no, cream rises to the top. And what he was saying is if you love something, your natural affinity for doing it well will rise, because your love and your interest and your
Yeah.
curiosity is what keeps making it interesting to you. And
Yep.
if it's interesting to you, you'll actually do really well. And what we don't know what really well means. It could mean just make you really happy. It could mean that you make contributions into the world around you.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that would be it, cream rises, follow what you love. We've heard that so many times, but I
Sure.
think that's it. And now my daughter's working in fashion, and she's
Oh,
really good at it,
that's awesome.
and she loves it. And so, that's, I don't, when people say, like, thank God it's Friday, like, I know what it feels like to be tired. I know what it feels like to put in a big work week, and I know how good Friday can feel. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to live
We're
like,
living for one day of the week, right? Or
yeah,
for the
I don't wanna
weekend.
live
And
like that. That
yep.
just feels like a kind of death to me.
Oh, yeah.
So, I wanna go out with a bang. I wanna go out feeling that like I wanna go out noticing, like, what am I afraid of? What do I still wanna do? What terrifies me? Where do I feel that I'm not good enough to do this thing? And I wanna move into that stuff.
I love that.
I don't wanna, so again, cream rises to the top.
Yeah.
You love
Yep.
something, follow it.
Yep.
And
That's
and
fantastic.
and not worry about what that looks like. But I could never be a chef in a big kitchen. Well, it's not so much the vision of what you want. I think it's just like, I like to cook.
Yeah.
I like music. You know, I see stories everywhere. Write them down,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
like
fantastic.
that.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, that was excellent. What would you say your superpower is?
hmm I think my superpower is creating space for people, creating space for people to drop in and unzip and come out. I think that's my
Oh,
superpower,
I love
is
that.
to create an environment where people feel that they can be themselves.
Yep. I think anybody who watches or hears this can automatically tell that that's the case, right? You're definitely uh, it just oozes off of you. I mean,
Thank
I can
you.
see that. Yeah, it's
And
fantastic.
and as we're talking, there's a part of me going, "That's right, Lori. You just keep living like that." It's an everyday practice.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like, I walk out the door. It's like, "Oh yeah, pay attention.
I got to
Here
do
it
it
is again,
too.
Lori.
Yeah,
Here it is again." It's all
absolutely.
practice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, someone who might be interested in coming to a training or a workshop or one of the programs that you're putting on online, but they're
Mm,
maybe struggling, right, with the self-confidence. I can imagine there'll be a listener out there that's like, "Oh, that sounds really good. This sounds like
mhm,
something I'd want to do, but
mhm,
it's not for me. I don't know." What would
mhm,
be the thing that you'd say to that person? Obviously, you know about those moments of indecision and self-doubt, and uh, how empowering it can be once you break through that. But sometimes people need that little nudge. So what kind of nudge might you give them?
mhm. Um, allow yourself to allow yourself to do it poorly. Allow yourself to not be the best person. I recently got back to tennis, and I hadn't played for 40 years.
Yeah.
And part of the fun of getting on a tennis court with a racket is that I don't have to be the best one on the court. And
Yep.
it gives me a lot of freedom to just have fun. And it
Yeah.
gives me a lot of freedom to play badly because I don't need to be the best person on the court. And so I would say, like, allow yourself to just sort of bumble into it and not have to do it well, and see if you can just allow that.
Absolutely.
And then from that softened, accepting place where you're just like, you know, see what comes up for you,
That's
you know?
great.
It's really the judgment, I think, that keeps us from so much joy,
Absolutely,
you
without
know?
question. Well,
Mhm.
so one of the things I failed to tell you about the ripple, the magic moments when people connect and they learn these things, I call them connection points. These little bite-sized morsels of information you learn about somebody that you file away, but that becomes your dialogue, jumping off point, right? And those things can be, I can imagine in your, group settings, those connection points are certainly wide open when people are sharing at such a level of vulnerability, right? But just like you sharing right there that you like tennis, I played tennis for a long time. Actually, supported myself all through high school being a tennis instructor. And I was like you, I was a nonconformist. So I got on the tennis team in high school. I had the earring and the long hair and all of the other guys. My dad taught me to play. I didn't have professional
Me
lessons.
too.
They were
Yeah.
so pissed that I made the team because I was
You
non-traditional, had
yeah,
everything in from my strokes to my serve and everything. And I
yeah.
I love John McEnroe, so I had a temper like John McEnroe. So I was
Uh-huh.
extremely disruptive and because I wasn't
Yeah.
that mold. But the thing I think that I'm so attracted to you about in your work is that you weren't following that prescriptive method either. And so finding
Mhm.
those opportunities to find that thing that you're good at, pursue it because you like it and love it, and see what comes of it. And for me, it was that's how it manifested. But now I got to come to California and play some tennis.
If we can play really badly.
Yeah, well, no problem. Yeah, I have not played for a few years, so I'll be right there. So not a problem.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Yeah, yeah, I appreciate the conversation. It's just always a good reminder of, of saying yes to ourselves,
Yeah, yeah,
and, saying yes to to so much more joy, and being willing also to be flat, or to start, with your belly hanging over your
yeah.
jeans, or to do it poorly. I
I
think
love that.
there's an easiness there. And,
Absolutely.
of course, I teach what I need to learn. That's why I'm so invested in this, is
Yeah.
because this is my practice.
Yep. Yeah.
I still have parts of myself also that really want to do it well. I really want to, that perfectionist part of me. And so that's why I'm to stay with it. But, the way, I would say, if anyone's interested in this work, if you go to my website, we're creating there are freebie things and ways you can try the work.
Yeah.
We have a community of about 350 people all over the world who are receiving it's called the Wild Family. So we created a family. And I make these short little videos during the week. I make 3 days a week. I send you a short video talking about the stuff you and I are talking about
Yeah.
relaxing, about just being ourselves, about our home voice. Um, and then I give them a poem, and then they write. And some people share it on a Facebook page, but some people are just in the practice for themselves. And then we meet every 2 weeks for some live writing. But again, this is a community of people who are meeting themselves where they are and meeting each other where they are. And that's the Wild Family. So that's the practice. Because I think that practicing is really where it's at, as a guitar
Yeah.
player, as a tennis player, like anything you do more with some repetition, you get better at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So, I have one last question for you, but before we do that, because I want to make sure that people don't miss that, remind people how they can find that. 27powers.org is the website, right? And then
Yeah.
how do they find you on social? Where do you want them to follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram a lot. I really
Okay.
love Instagram, and I think it's just at Laurie Wagner. Laurie
Okay.
Wagner
Okay.
at Laurie Wagner. That's probably the best. Again, you won't be surprised to know that my marketing, publicity, social media is a little bit off the radar as well. I'm not somebody who took business classes. So everything that I've created, and I have a teacher training where I train people to do this work, it's all just really homespun.
I love it.
I feel like sometimes my work is like I'm just a Girl Scout selling Girl Scout cookies. And I've just been selling a lot of cookies for a long time, but
Yep.
the strategy is just to show up from an authentic place.
Yeah.
And so while I do a lot of marketing, more marketing than I've ever done, I'm never marketing or launching anything if I'm not feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just can't do that. And we just pulled a launch yesterday that was supposed to happen next week. Timing's off.
Yeah.
Timing's
And you
off.
just feel it. So you know it. Yep.
I just know it. It's like there was something too squeezed about it. So
Yeah.
it's like, we're going to put that off, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Better to show up authentic and better to show up, just like you and me today,
Yeah.
present, than to squeeze something in that
To
doesn't
try
feel
and
right.
make it work just because you're, trying to fit to arbitrary timeline. Yep. I love that.
So that's
Well,
how people can find me.
okay. Well, we'll definitely put the links in the show notes. So everybody, don't worry, they'll be there as well. But I encourage you to go check that out. Last question I have for you, because this is called the Ripple Effect Podcast. What does the ripple effect mean to you?
I think it's what's happening here right now with me and you.
Yeah.
It's you're showing up as this really dynamic, connected guy, and I'm meeting you in that place and trying to also just be myself. And how I feel, the effect of that on me is like, oh, right, connection. That's where it's at.
Yeah.
It was what my friend said again. He said, just be connected to yourself and you'll connect to others.
Yeah.
So I think that's the effect it has. So it has me trust something, Steve, that happens in the moment that we created together here.
I love that. Oh, well, and I may need to call you every day if you feel like I'm dynamic and connected. Nobody ever gives me that compliment. So thank you for that.
Thank you for reaching out.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I'm so grateful. I mean, this is this isn't gonna be a one-time thing. I definitely want to find a way to get involved somehow in your work, and I want to promote your what you're doing out there in the world, because you are creating some very positive ripples for people, and there's no doubt in my mind. And so I'm so grateful Cynthia connected us, and that you were open and willing to have a conversation with this crazy guy that that was talking about ripples. So I mean, this is awesome.
That's great. I love it. Maybe
Well,
you should put your tennis racket back there with your guitar.
yeah, I should. Absolutely. I'll come out for tennis lessons and guitar lessons. It sounds like you got me there too.
No. I'll learn from you. We'll trade or something.
It could be a rough outing then, but I love it. But
I also have a banjo back there. I have a banjo back there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my brother was a really good banjo player. I never picked it up, but I've always wanted to. I like you, I find things that I'm interested in. I'm not a great guitar player, but I'm forcing myself, self-taught, to embrace it because I love it. It's where I have a bad day. I can just go upstairs to my, my game room, and I'll play guitar for 30 minutes and everything is right as rain,
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I love it.
Thank you.
Well, Laurie, thank you so much for joining us for the Ripple Effect Podcast, guys. We're going to have the show notes, so we'll have links to Laurie's website and all the different ways that you can connect with her. I encourage you to do so. This has been such a great episode. I'm super excited. We'll be back again with another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. But until then, Laurie, ripple on.
Right on. Thank you so much, Steve.
Take care.
You.